Hey guys, CD Gaming here, and I just wanted to go over the build I'm going to be league starting, which is going to be the Ice Strike Shattering Palm Martial Artist. So it's going to be a pretty standard Ice Strike build for the most part. So what I mean is it's going to be just taking crit, generic damage nodes, evasion, energy shield, all of the same things that go into Ice Strike typically. But there are a couple new things on the passive tree here that I just wanted to mention really quick. So these over here, first principle of Hollow, first teachings of the Keeper. These are some nice defensive nodes for some resistances, evasion, energy shield, and deflection. So deflection is something that I want to try to add in since they tried to buff it here on the passive tree, so I'm going to see how well that works. As it stands, I believe I have, 65% added from evasion? Yeah. 65% of evasion added is deflection, so we'll see how well that works. That's something I'm going to be experimenting with over time, so this passive tree isn't really set in stone, but I wanted to have kind of like a baseline guide for you guys to look at and see what I'm doing here. For leveling it, I am going to be leveling with Hollow Palm. I think Hollow Palm is a really strong leveling option. It just tends to fade away towards maps. So I'll be getting Hollow Palm somewhere around the first lab, which is going to be Way of the Stone Fist is going to be my first point, which I think is going to be incredibly strong and will more than likely be able to carry you with just this and Hollow Palm all the way through to the end game, so long as you get some pretty decent gloves. As far as gloves go, a pair that looks kind of like this, so you're going to want flat cold damage, flat fizz, and all melee skills. So one thing that you will have to note with the melee skills portion is when I saw it during the showcase, it did level it down from 2 to 1. So I'm not sure if that was an intended interaction or if that's something that is going to be fixed. But just be aware that if it does go down, then that might be the way that they want it for some reason. But it's still going to be really good early for Hollow Palm because Hollow Palm scales well off of plus to melee skills. Okay, so for my second one, I'm going to be taking the Runic Meridians. I have a feeling that the runes are going to be incredibly powerful and overtuned to start. We don't really know because there's going to be over 300 runes and socketables, so we're going to have to see how that actually plays out, but I have a feeling that's going to be really strong, so I'm going to take that as my second. Also, I don't want to take Hollow Focus as my second because it doesn't look to be that good on its own without Hollow Resonance. So what I plan on doing is respecking out of Runic Meridians by the time I get to my third ascendancy, which will be right up about here. So I'm going to spec out of Runic Meridians, add both Focus and Resonance. And then later for my fourth lab, I'll be adding Meridians back in. It's a little bit weird, but it's I think it's going to work out better because at the end game, you're going to have access to more of those high tier runes anyways. So you're going to want that as more of a late game type of thing. At the same time as specking out of Hollow Palm, I'm going to be specking into these quarterstaff nodes up here. Pretty standard. Helps with power charges, freeze buildup, all of that good stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the passive tree here. One thing to mention is I'm still using Resonance mixed with Combat Frenzy, I believe is what it's called. Yep. And that's going to, instead of generate frenzy charges, it's going to generate power charges for me. So that's the one thing that's not super obvious when you just look at it. So I lost my train of thought. Okay. So just looking at it in game here. This is the build that I used for the footage at the beginning. I wanted to make sure that it had okay-ish gear. Stuff that isn't too high-end, that it would be, you know, out of range of a leveling build, right? So all of this gear is within, what, 5 divines or so, which is actually really cheap for PoE 2. So this is my quarterstaff. Plus 5 to melee skills is going to be the new cap. So I wanted to somewhat emulate that here. So I have plus 5 on here, plus a bunch of cold damage. And that's basically what you want on a quarterstaff. You just want it a little bit more than what I have. You've already seen the gloves. My rings, basically just flat cold damage as well as resistances. And then amulet is going to be, again, plus to melee skills, resistances, life. And then a little bit of defenses on there as well. For the most part, that kind of goes for all of this gear. It's just life, defenses, resistances. So generally, I would say by the time you get to red tier maps, you should have around 40 evasion. And you should have everything capped with some chaos res in there. Preferably around 40, but if you can get higher than that, that's better. So yeah, a lot of this is still probably going to change. Except for the skills, actually. So skills are pretty much going to stay exactly the same unless there's some kind of Kalgurin skill. But I don't know what they all are yet, obviously, so I do have one open slot to potentially add one of those in there with the runic ward in case there is something super interesting. But I'll go ahead and add all of these into the Maxroll guide so you can take a look through all of that as well. But the main combo with this build is going to be Ice Strike for single target, as well as Tempest Spell, which can actually now be ancestrally boosted. So one of these links probably freeze. I'm going to take that out for Ancestral Call, see if ancestrally boosting it makes it better. There is also a need for cooldown reduction for Hollow Resonance, which I forgot to mention. So that should actually be added into the gear at some point. So I don't know which slot I'm going to add it to. Like I said, it's all going to be pretty experimental here, pretty early. But moving on, we still use Charge Staff, which is why I need power charges, which I'm probably also going to experiment with the other hollow one. Why can't I remember the name? Hollow Form. I'm probably going to experiment with that a little bit in power charges with Ice Strike and Shattering Palm Bolts to see if it's any good at all. Hand of Chayula, that's going to be... This is how we get our mark and our curse. So you can apply both with just the one. It also applies them at extra effect. The only issue is that it's kind of a long attack time, so you want to get rapid attacks. And that's really it for this. So you're going to be dashing around with Shattering Palm. If you come up to a rare or something that doesn't die instantly, you Ice Strike. Using Charge Staff, basically keep it at 6 stacks as long as possible, which should be about a minute at a time. And then you have your Herald of Ice is your main aura. So in terms of priority, it's going to be Herald of Ice, then Combat Frenzy, then Ghost Dance. Ghost Dance did get nerfed, so That's why it's the lowest on the priority. But Herald of Ice is going to be what kind of triggers all of those crazy explosions. As all of the ice shards from Shattering Palm dies, all of them are going to explode with Herald of Ice, and it's kind of immensely satisfying. So, yeah, that's the general flow of the gems. Again, I'll go ahead and put every single gem link and the priority of each one into the Maxroll guide, because that's not really going to change. And then, yeah, I'll probably put out a POB for this within a couple days of the launch, depending on how long it takes them to update POB to 0.5. And I'll also update it with any new information that I get from the league. Since there's going to be so much added, it's going to be really hard to tell if it's going to be the same or drastically different. So definitely you can follow along. I'll be streaming it, hopefully, depending on how my internet decides to act up or not. But yeah, I should be streaming it for the entire weekend at the very least, so you can follow along if you have any questions or anything like that. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know if there's anything I missed or anything you needed to be explained in further detail. But yeah, you guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.